Marcus wiped the sweat from his forehead as he finished cleaning the last stall in the great dragon stables of Draconis Prime. The massive stone structure stretched for nearly a kilometer, housing over 300 dragons of various sizes and ages. Each stall was designed to accommodate beings that could grow as large as ancient earth whales, with reinforced walls that could withstand the heat of dragonfire. At 19 years old, Marcus had spent his entire life among these magnificent creatures. Unlike most humans on Draconis Prime, he had never known fear when looking into their ancient, intelligent eyes. While other stable workers hurried through their duties with heads down, Marcus took time to observe each dragon's behavior, noting subtle changes in their posture, eating habits, and social interactions. The dragon hierarchy on Draconis Prime was absolute. At the top stood the Elder Council, 5 ancient dragons whose combined wisdom spanned over 10,000 years. Below them were the various dragon clans, each specializing in different aspects of their advanced civilization. The dragons had mastered faster-than-light travel, energy manipulation, and biotechnology that seemed like magic to most species. Humans occupied the lowest tier of this society. They had arrived on Draconis Prime 3 generations ago as refugees from a dying colony ship. The dragons, in their magnanimity, had allowed the humans to settle on their world in exchange for manual labor and service. Most humans accepted this arrangement without question, grateful simply to be alive. Marcus finished his cleaning and moved to the feeding area, where massive chunks of protein-rich meat waited to be distributed. Each dragon had specific dietary requirements based on their age, clan affiliation, and current health status. The feeding schedule was complex, but Marcus had memorized every detail without ever being taught to read the official charts. As he approached the stall of Valorex, a mid-tier bronze dragon from the warrior clan, Marcus noticed something wrong. The dragon lay with his great head resting on his forelimbs, but his breathing seemed labored. His usually bright copper scales had a dull, grayish tint. "What troubles you, mighty Valorex?" Marcus asked softly, approaching the stall gate with slow, respectful movements. The dragon's massive eye opened, focusing on the young human. Most dragons barely acknowledged the stable workers, considering them as relevant as the cleaning equipment. But Valorex had always been different. He had watched Marcus work for years, noting the human's genuine care for dragonkind. "Young stable keeper," Valorex rumbled, his voice like distant thunder. "I feel a strange weakness in my bones. The clan healers say it is merely the changing of seasons, but I have lived through 400 season changes. This feels different." Marcus studied the dragon carefully. He had noticed similar symptoms in 3 other dragons over the past 2 weeks. Each time, the official dragon healers had dismissed the concerns as minor ailments or imagined problems. But Marcus had been keeping careful mental notes, and a pattern was emerging. "Honored Valorex, may I examine your feeding area?" Marcus asked, knowing he was pushing the boundaries of acceptable behavior for a human servant. The dragon tilted his massive head, curious. "You seek to heal where trained dragon healers have found nothing wrong. I seek only to serve and learn, Great One. Sometimes fresh eyes see what familiar ones miss." Valorex considered this for a long moment. In dragon society, wisdom was valued above all else, regardless of its source. "Very well, small human. Show me what you see." Marcus entered the stall, moving with careful respect around the dragon's enormous form. He examined the feeding trough, the water supply, and the surrounding area. What he found made his blood run cold. In the corners of the feeding area, nearly invisible to casual observation, grew small patches of what looked like harmless moss. But Marcus had seen similar growths in the other affected dragon stalls. The moss had a faint, oily sheen and gave off an almost imperceptible sweet smell. "Valorex," Marcus said carefully, "when did you first notice this moss growing in your feeding area?" The dragon's great head swung around to examine what Marcus indicated. "I had not noticed it at all, young one. Is it significant?" Marcus felt his heart racing. He was just a stable boy, with no formal education or training in dragon biology. But his years of observation and his natural curiosity had taught him to notice patterns that others missed. If he was right about what this moss represented, then Draconis Prime faced a crisis that could threaten the very foundation of their civilization. I believe it may be Great Valorex, but I need to examine other locations before I can be certain. Over the next several hours, Marcus conducted a careful survey of the dragon stables. He found a strange moss in 17 different stalls, always in areas where dragons fed or drank. In every case, the dragon residing in that stall showed early symptoms of the mysterious weakness that was beginning to spread. But the most alarming discovery came when Marcus checked the Elder Quarters, the sacred halls where the 5 ancient members of the Dragon Council resided. The moss was there too, growing more thickly than anywhere else. If the elder dragons were affected by whatever this organism represented, the consequences would be catastrophic. Marcus knew he had to report his findings, but he also knew that no dragon would listen to a human stable boy making claims about dragon biology. The social hierarchy of Draconis Prime was absolute, and crossing those boundaries could result in exile or worse. As evening approached, Marcus finished his duties with a heavy heart. He returned to the human quarter of the city, a modest collection of simple buildings where the refugee population lived. The humans had adapted well to life on Draconis Prime, but they had never forgotten their status as guests who existed only at the sufferance of their dragon hosts. Marcus lived in a small apartment with his mother, Elena, who worked in the dragon archives translating ancient texts that the dragons found too tedious to handle themselves. His father had died in an industrial accident when Marcus was 12, leaving them to support each other in their modest circumstances. "You look troubled tonight," Elena observed as Marcus picked at his evening meal. "Did something happen at the stables?" Marcus hesitated. His mother was one of the few humans who could read and write in the dragon script, but she was also deeply aware of the precarious nature of human existence on Draconis Prime. She had always counseled him to keep his head down and do his job without drawing attention. "I think the dragons may be facing some kind of health crisis," Marcus said carefully. "There are symptoms appearing that their healers aren't recognizing." Elena set down her utensil and looked at her son with concern. "Marcus, you cannot involve yourself in dragon medical affairs. It's not your place, and it could bring serious consequences for our entire community. But what if I'm right, and they don't see it in time? What if this gets worse? Then, that is for the dragons to handle. We are here as guests, not as advisors or healers. Promise me you won't do anything reckless." Marcus nodded, but his mind continued racing. He thought about Valorex's labored breathing, about the strange moss spreading through the stables, and about the potential implications for the elder dragons. His human perspective, unencumbered by thousands of years of dragon medical tradition, might be the key to identifying a threat that the dragons couldn't see. That night, Marcus lay awake staring at the ceiling. Outside his window, he could see the great spires of the Dragon Council chambers, illuminated by bioluminescent panels that cast an ethereal glow across the city. Somewhere in those towers, the elder dragons who had ruled for millennia continued their ancient vigil over Draconis Prime. By morning, Marcus had made his decision. He would continue his investigation, but he would be careful about how he proceeded. The fate of both dragons and humans on Draconis Prime might depend on his ability to bridge the gap between species and social classes. As dawn broke over the Dragon City, casting long shadows across the stable complex, Marcus prepared for another day of work. But this time, he carried with him the weight of knowledge that could change everything and the terrible responsibility of deciding what to do with it. The great dragons of Draconis Prime had no idea that their salvation might rest in the hands of a human stable boy who had learned to see beyond the boundaries of species and social rank. The mysterious moss continued to spread, and time was running out for everyone on the planet. 3 days later, the crisis Marcus had feared began to unfold with terrifying speed. He arrived at the stables to find chaos unlike anything he had ever witnessed in his years of service. Dragon healers rush between stalls, their usually composed demeanor replaced by obvious anxiety and confusion. Valorex lay motionless in his stall, his breathing so shallow that Marcus had to watch carefully to detect any movement at all. The bronze dragon's eyes, once bright with intelligence and warmth, had become dull and unfocused. Similar scenes played out throughout the stable complex as more dragons succumbed to the mysterious weakness. "Stand aside, human," commanded Healer Thessarian, imposing emerald dragon whose medical expertise was renowned throughout the dragon clans. Her scaled hands glowed with diagnostic energy as she examined Valorex, but her expression grew increasingly frustrated with each passing moment. Marcus retreated to a respectful distance, but continued to observe. He had spent the past 3 days conducting his own investigation, carefully documenting the spread of the strange moss and correlating it with the appearance of symptoms in the affected dragons. His findings painted a picture that filled him with dread. The moss was not native to Draconis Prime. Marcus had found references in the human archives to similar organisms that had appeared on other worlds where humans had established colonies. In every case, the organism had been parasitic, feeding off the bioenergy of the dominant life forms on each planet. The humans had developed resistance over generations of exposure, but species encountering it for the first time were devastatingly vulnerable. But the worst news was yet to come. As Marcus moved through his duties, cleaning stalls and tending to the few dragons who remained unaffected, he overheard a conversation that made his blood run cold. "The elders are showing symptoms," Healer Thessarian was telling her assistant, a younger dragon named Corinth. Elder Drakmor collapsed during the morning council session. Elder Nixera can barely maintain her human form illusion. If we lose the Elder Council, the implications were staggering. The Elder Dragons were not just the political leaders of Draconis Prime. They were the repository of thousands of years of knowledge and wisdom. Their bioenergy signatures maintained the planetary defense systems that protected Draconis Prime from asteroid impacts and hostile alien incursions. If they died, the entire planet would be vulnerable to destruction. Marcus finished his morning duties and made a decision that would either save 2 species or destroy his family's future on Draconis Prime. He approached Healer Thessarian with the careful, respectful posture that humans have been taught to adopt when addressing dragons. "Honored Healer," he said, keeping his voice steady despite his racing heart, "I believe I may have information relevant to the illness affecting the dragons." Thessarian's great head swung toward him, her golden eyes flashing with irritation. "Human Stablekeeper, this is not the time for interruptions. The dragons face a crisis beyond your comprehension. I understand that, Honored One, but I have been observing a pattern that may explain the source of the illness." Several other dragon healers had turned their attention to the conversation, their expressions ranging from curiosity to outright hostility at a human's presumption. Marcus felt the weight of their ancient gazes, but pressed on. "There is an organism growing in the feeding areas of all affected dragons. It appears to be parasitic and may be the cause of the energy drain that is weakening your people." Healer Thessarian's eyes narrowed. "Impossible. Our diagnostic equipment would have detected any parasitic organism. You are a stable cleaner with no medical training. What could you possibly understand about dragon biology that we do not?" Marcus had anticipated this reaction. Dragons had spent millennia developing their medical science, and the idea that a human servant could identify something they had missed was almost insulting to their pride. But he had prepared for this moment. "Honored Healer, I do not claim to understand dragon biology, but I have spent my entire life observing the dragons in these stables. I have noticed changes that may be too subtle for formal diagnostic equipment to detect." From his work pouch, Marcus withdrew a small sample container holding a specimen of the moss he had carefully collected. "This organism grows in the feeding areas of every affected dragon. It is not native to Draconis Prime, and humans have encountered similar parasites on other worlds." The mention of human experience with the organism caught Thessarian's attention. Despite their superior technology, the dragons recognized that humans had lived on many different worlds and might have encountered biological threats unknown to Draconis Prime. "Show me," Thessarian commanded. Marcus led the group of healers to Valorex's stall, pointing out the nearly invisible moss growing in the corners of the feeding area. Under Thessarian's bioenergy scanner, the moss revealed itself as a complex parasitic organism that fed on the specific electromagnetic signatures produced by dragon neural activity. The healers exchanged glances of growing alarm. Their diagnostic equipment had been calibrated to detect known dragon diseases and infections, but this organism operated on frequencies that barely registered on their sensors. "If this organism is indeed the cause," Healer Thessarian said slowly, "then why are humans unaffected? You work among the dragons daily, yet show no symptoms." Marcus had hoped to avoid this question, but he knew it was crucial to their understanding. Humans develop resistance to organisms like this over many generations of exposure on different worlds. Our bioenergy signatures are different from yours, making us less attractive hosts for the parasite. What he didn't mention was that humans had also learned to recognize and combat such threats through bitter experience. The organism had killed thousands of humans before they developed effective countermeasures. "Even if your assessment is correct," said Healer Corinth, "identifying the cause does not provide us with a cure. How do we eliminate an organism that our systems were not designed to combat?" Marcus felt the weight of the moment. Everything he had observed and learned was leading to this point where his human perspective might be the key to saving the dragon civilization that had given his people shelter. "The organism can be eliminated," he said carefully, "but it requires a treatment approach that dragons have never needed to use. Humans developed a bioenergy frequency that disrupts the parasite's life cycle, but generating that frequency requires techniques that your healers may find unconventional." Thessarian's expression was unreadable. The idea of learning medical techniques from humans challenged everything the dragons believed about the natural order of their world. But with the Elder Council facing imminent collapse, conventional approaches were no longer sufficient. "Explain these techniques," she commanded. Marcus took a deep breath. "The treatment involves creating a sustained bioenergy pulse at a very specific frequency. Humans accomplish this through a combination of focused meditation, controlled breathing, and what you might call primitive energy channeling. It's not as sophisticated as dragon healing methods, but it's specifically designed to combat this type of parasite." The dragons looked skeptical. Their healing methods relied on advanced technology and precise energy manipulation that took decades to master. The idea that crude human techniques could succeed where dragon science had failed was difficult to accept. But Valorex, despite his weakened condition, raised his great head and spoke in a voice barely above a whisper. "Young Marcus has shown wisdom in his observations. Perhaps human methods, however primitive, offer solutions that our sophistication cannot provide." Thessarian considered this for a long moment. Around the stables, more dragons were succumbing to the parasite's effects. In the distance, emergency signals indicated that the situation in the elder quarters was deteriorating rapidly. "Human Marcus," Thessarian said finally, using his name for the first time, "if you believe you can help, then demonstrate your methods. But understand that if you fail, or if you cause harm to any dragon, the consequences will be severe." Marcus nodded, understanding that he was about to attempt something that no human had ever done before: provide medical treatment to a species whose biology was fundamentally different from his own. The techniques that worked against the parasite in humans might not translate directly to dragons, but he had to try. The fate of Draconis Prime now rested on a stable boy's ability to bridge the gap between human experience and dragon physiology, using knowledge that neither species possessed alone. As Marcus prepared for the most important moment of his life, he could only hope that the bonds of trust he had built over years of faithful service would be enough to carry them through the crisis ahead. Marcus stood before Valorex's massive form, acutely aware that every dragon healer in the complex was watching his every move. The bronze dragon's condition had deteriorated further since the morning, and Marcus could see the faint glow of the parasitic moss spreading along the walls of the stall, like a slow-moving infection. The treatment requires direct bioenergy contact, Marcus explained to the assembled healers. I need to place my hands on Valorex's scales and generate the specific frequency that disrupts the parasite's life cycle. Healer Thessarian stepped forward, her emerald scales bristling with concern. Human contact with a dragon's bioenergy matrix is forbidden. The incompatibility could cause severe neural damage to both species. Marcus had expected this objection. Dragon society had strict taboos about interspecies energy contact, based on millennia of careful scientific study. But human experience had taught different lessons. Honored healer, humans have successfully shared bioenergy with many species across the galaxy. We learned that compatibility is not about similarity, but about harmony. Our energy frequencies don't match yours, but they can work together if properly synchronized. Valorex is great. I focused on Marcus with effort. Young healer, the dragon whispered, using a title that made several of the watching dragons gasp in surprise. I trust your wisdom. Proceed. Marcus approached slowly, placing his hands on the warm bronze scales just below Valorex's massive head. The sensation was unlike anything he had ever experienced. Dragon bioenergy felt like standing near a massive generator, with currents of power flowing just beneath the surface of their scales. Closing his eyes, Marcus began the meditation techniques that humans had developed over centuries of fighting parasitic organisms. He regulated his breathing, finding the rhythm that would allow him to generate the specific frequency needed to disrupt the moss's life cycle. The process was exhausting. Human bioenergy was much weaker than dragon energy, and Marcus had to push himself to the absolute limits of his capabilities to generate a frequency strong enough to affect the parasite. Sweat poured down his face as he maintained the connection, feeling Valorex's massive life force responding to his efforts. For several terrifying moments, nothing seemed to happen. The dragons watched in tense silence as Marcus continued his treatment, their skepticism evident in their expressions. But gradually a change began to occur. The moss growing along the walls of the stall started to wither and fall away, its oily sheen fading to a dull gray. More importantly, Valorex's breathing became deeper and more regular. The bronze dragon's eyes began to regain their characteristic brightness. Impossible, breted et aller Corinthe. The bioenergy readings show the parasite colonies collapsing throughout his system. Marcus maintained the treatment for another 10 minutes before exhaustion forced him to break the connection. He staggered backward, caught by Thessarian's careful claw before he could fall. Valorex slowly raised his massive head, moving with a strength that had been absent for days. I feel renewed, the dragon rumbled, his voice carrying its familiar power. The weakness that plagued me is gone. The assembled healers erupted in excited discussion, their bioenergy scanners confirming that the parasitic organism had been completely eliminated from Valorex's system. But their celebration was cut short by an urgent communication from the Elder Quarters. Healer Thessarian, came the distressed voice of Council Guardian Zephyros. Elder Drakmor has lost consciousness. Elder Nixra's condition is critical. You must come immediately. The implications hit everyone present like a physical blow. If the Elder Dragons died, the planetary defense systems would fail, leaving Draconis Prime vulnerable to destruction. The knowledge and wisdom accumulated over millennia would be lost forever. Human Marcus, Thessarian said urgently, can your techniques be used on the Elder Dragons? Marcus felt the weight of the entire planet settling on his shoulders. The Elder Dragons were not just larger and older than other dragons. They were fundamentally different beings whose bioenergy matrices operated on scales that human science barely comprehended. I can try, he said simply, but the Elder Dragons' energy patterns are so much more complex than those of younger dragons. I may not be strong enough to generate the frequency needed to reach them. What would you require to increase your chances of success? Thessarian asked. Marcus thought rapidly. In human history, there have been cases where multiple humans worked together to treat parasitic infections in large alien creatures. But the technique was dangerous and had never been attempted with dragons. I would need other humans to help amplify the bioenergy frequency, he said, but they would need to be individuals who have worked closely with dragons and understand your energy patterns. That would mean involving your mother and the other archive workers, Thessarian realized. But they have no medical training. Neither do I, Marcus pointed out. But sometimes experience and intuition matter more than formal training. Thessarian made a decision that would have been unthinkable just hours earlier. Very well. Send for the human archive workers. We will attempt this unprecedented collaboration. Within an hour, Elena and 5 other humans who worked in the Dragon Archives had been hastily summoned to the Elder Quarters. The massive chambers that housed the Dragon Council were unlike anything most humans had ever seen, filled with bioenergy conduits and ancient technology that hummed with power. Elder Drakmor lay motionless on a platform of living crystal, his massive silver form barely breathing. The parasitic moss had spread across the walls of his chamber like a creeping disease, its growth accelerated by the immense bioenergy that the Elder Dragon naturally generated. "Mother," Marcus said as Elena approached, her face pale with fear and confusion, "I need you to help me save the Elder Dragons." "Marcus, what are you talking about? I'm an archivist, not a healer. You work with dragon energy patterns every day when you translate their ancient texts. You understand how their minds work better than any other human on the planet. I need that understanding to help me reach them." Elena looked at the massive form of Elder Drakmor, then at her son's determined face. The weight of the moment was not lost on her. The dragons had given humanity refuge when they had nowhere else to go. Now, humanity had a chance to repay that debt. "Tell me what to do," she said firmly. Marcus explained the technique as quickly as possible. The humans would need to form a bioenergy circle around the Elder Dragon, each person contributing their energy to amplify the frequency needed to disrupt the parasite. It was dangerous for the humans, potentially fatal if their energy patterns became too entangled with the dragon's massive biomatrix. "Remember," Marcus warned as they took their positions, "we're not trying to match the Elder Dragon's energy. We're creating a harmony that will allow our frequency to reach the parasite without damaging his neural pathways." The 6 humans joined hands around Elder Drakmor's platform, with Marcus as the focal point for their combined effort. As they began the meditation sequence, the dragon healers watched with equipment that had never been designed to monitor interspecies bioenergy collaboration. The process was exponentially more difficult than treating Valorex. Elder Drakmor's bioenergy matrix was like trying to harmonize with a star, vast and complex beyond human comprehension. Marcus felt his consciousness stretching to its limits as he tried to maintain the precise frequency needed to combat the parasite. But gradually, the combined human effort began to have an effect. The moss covering the chamber walls started to wither and fall away. Elder Drakmor's breathing became stronger and more regular. Most importantly, the ancient dragon's eyes began to flutter open. "By the ancient fires," Elder Drakmor rumbled, his voice weak but gaining strength. "What has transpired here?" The assembled dragons and humans were too exhausted to immediately respond, but Healer Thessarian stepped forward to explain the unprecedented collaboration that had saved the Elder Dragon's life. Elder Drakmor's ancient eyes focused on Marcus and the other humans with an expression of profound contemplation. In his millennia of existence, he had never encountered anything like what had just occurred. "Young humans," the Elder Dragon said slowly, "you have accomplished what dragon science could not. You have proven that wisdom and compassion can transcend the boundaries of species and social status." The implications of Elder Drakmor's words rippled through the chamber like a seismic shift. For the first time in the history of Draconis Prime, an Elder Dragon had acknowledged humans as equals in wisdom and capability. But for other elder dragons still lay dying in chambers throughout the complex, and time was running out to save them all. The real test of human-dragon cooperation was just beginning. The treatment of the remaining elder dragons required a level of coordination between species that had never been attempted in the history of Draconis Prime. As word spread through the dragon clans about the human success in saving Elder Drakmor, reactions ranged from amazement to outright disbelief. Marcus found himself at the center of an unprecedented crisis management effort. While Healer Thessarian coordinated the medical aspects of the treatment plan, Marcus worked with the Human Archive team to develop protocols for safely treating beings whose bioenergy matrices were beyond anything they had previously encountered. The problem is scale, Marcus explained to the assembled team of humans and dragons in the council chamber. Elder Drakmor was difficult enough, but Elder Nixera's energy patterns are even more complex. She's maintained the planetary defense grid for over 2,000 years. Her neural pathways are integrated with the entire planet's bioenergy network. Elena studied the bioenergy readings that the dragons had provided. Despite her lack of formal medical training, her years of working with dragon thought patterns had given her insights that proved invaluable. Marcus, she said thoughtfully, what if we're approaching this wrong? Instead of trying to overpower the parasite with brute force, what if we use the dragon's own energy patterns against it? Healer Thessarian looked up from her diagnostic equipment with interest. Explain your reasoning, human Elena. The parasites feed on dragon bioenergy, but they're calibrated for normal dragon frequencies. The elder dragons operate on much higher energy levels. If we could temporarily boost their natural frequencies beyond what the parasites can handle, we might be able to literally burn out the infection. Marcus felt a spark of excitement. His mother's suggestion aligned with some of the more advanced techniques that humans had developed for dealing with adaptive parasites. But implementing it would require a level of precision that pushed both species to their absolute limits. That could work, he said slowly, but it would require the dragons to voluntarily increase their bioenergy output while we maintain the harmonic frequency. If we get the timing wrong, we could cause permanent damage to their neural systems. Elder Drakmor, who had insisted on participating despite his recent recovery, spoke with the authority of millennia. The risk is acceptable. Better to attempt salvation than to surrender to certain death. The next 6 hours became a testament to interspecies cooperation under the most extreme circumstances. Teams of humans and dragons worked together to treat each elder dragon, learning and adapting their techniques with each attempt. Elder Nixera's treatment proved to be the most challenging. The ancient female dragon's consciousness was so deeply integrated with Draconis Prime's planetary systems that separating her personal bioenergy from the global network required surgical precision. Marcus and his team had to maintain their harmonic frequency while dragon technicians carefully isolated her neural pathways. Hold the frequency steady, Marcus called out to his human team as alarms began sounding throughout the chamber. Elder Nixera's bioenergy fluctuations were causing disruptions in the planetary defense grid, and meteor detection systems were reporting potential threats that the weakened grid couldn't adequately address. Elena and the other humans pushed themselves beyond exhaustion, maintaining the delicate harmonic balance while Nixera's massive consciousness fought against the parasitic infection. The treatment took nearly 2 hours, during which time Draconis Prime was essentially defenseless against external threats. But when Elder Nixera's eyes finally opened, blazing with restored power, her first act was to restore the planetary defense systems with an efficiency that left the dragon technician speechless. The ancient dragon had not only recovered from the infection, but seemed to have gained new insights from the experience of human-dragon bioenergy collaboration. Remarkable, she rumbled, her voice carrying harmonics that resonated through the chamber's crystal walls. I have touched human consciousness through our shared energy, and I find depths of adaptability that we never suspected. The treatment of Elder Zephyros, Elder Corvain, and Elder Thessarian followed similar patterns, each requiring modifications to account for their unique bioenergy signatures and specialized functions within dragon society. With each success, the cooperation between humans and dragons became more natural and effective. But the most significant challenge emerged after all 5 elder dragons had been successfully treated. The parasitic moss that had been eliminated from the elder quarters had to be tracked down and destroyed throughout the entire planet. Samples have been carried by wind and water to every major population center on Draconis Prime. The infestation is planet-wide, reported Guardian Zephyros after conducting a comprehensive survey. Every dragon settlement shows signs of parasitic contamination. If we don't eliminate it completely, reinfection is inevitable. Marcus realized that the solution would require mobilizing every human on Draconis Prime. Only humans possess the natural resistance to work safely in contaminated areas, and only they knew the specific techniques needed to eliminate the organism. "We need to organize treatment teams," he told the assembled council of elder dragons and clan leaders. Humans and dragons working together to cleanse every contaminated site on the planet. The proposal was unprecedented. It meant granting humans authority to enter sacred dragon spaces, to work as equals with dragon healers, and to take leadership roles in planetary health management. Elder Drakmor considered the implications carefully. Such an undertaking would require us to completely restructure our social hierarchy. Humans would no longer be servants, but partners in maintaining our civilization. The alternative, Marcus pointed out respectfully, is the eventual return of the parasite and the collapse of your society. The organism is adaptive. If we don't eliminate it completely, it will evolve resistance to our current treatment methods. The elder dragons exchanged glances that carried millennia of unspoken communication. The decision they were about to make would fundamentally alter the nature of their civilization. "Very well," Elder Nixera announced. "Let it be recorded that from this day forward, humans shall be recognized as full partners in the maintenance and protection of Draconis Prime. Their wisdom and capabilities have proven essential to our survival." The transformation that followed was unlike anything in the recorded history of either species. Humans and dragons worked side by side across the planet, cleansing contaminated sites and establishing monitoring systems to prevent future infestations. The collaboration revealed strengths in both species that neither had previously recognized. Dragons discovered that human adaptability and pattern recognition made them excellent partners in biological research and planetary management. Humans learned that dragon technology and energy manipulation could be modified to work in harmony with human bioenergy techniques, creating hybrid solutions that surpassed what either species could accomplish alone. Marcus found himself appointed as the first human-dragon liaison, a position created to facilitate ongoing cooperation between the species. It was a role he had never imagined possible, born from his simple desire to help the creatures he had cared for since childhood. As the planetary cleansing effort neared completion, Marcus stood on the observation deck of the Elder Council chambers, looking out over the great city of Draconis Prime. Dragons and humans worked together in the streets below, their combined efforts having created something entirely new in the galaxy, a truly cooperative multi-species civilization. The stable boy who had once cleaned dragon stalls in respectful silence had become the bridge between two species, proving that wisdom and compassion could overcome any barrier of hierarchy or prejudice. The elder dragons had lowered their heads to him not in submission, but in recognition of a partnership that would reshape their world forever. 6 months after the great cleansing of Draconis Prime, the transformation of their society was complete. What had begun as a crisis threatening the extinction of the elder dragons had evolved into a renaissance that elevated both species to heights neither could have achieved alone. Marcus stood in the newly constructed Hall of Partnership, a magnificent structure that blended dragon architectural mastery with human engineering innovations. The building itself was a symbol of their new relationship, with soaring spires that accommodated dragon flight patterns and intimate spaces designed for human-scale collaboration. Today marked the formal signing of the Draconis Accords, a comprehensive agreement that would serve as the foundation for human-dragon cooperation throughout the galaxy. Representatives from dozens of worlds had come to witness this unprecedented alliance between species that had once existed in a master-servant relationship. The transformation has exceeded all expectations, observed Elder Nixera as she reviewed bioenergy readings from across the planet. Our combined research capabilities have advanced dragon science by centuries in just 6 months. The partnership had indeed produced remarkable results. Human pattern recognition abilities had helped dragons identify inefficiencies in their energy distribution networks that had gone unnoticed for millennia. Dragon bioenergy manipulation techniques had enhanced human physical capabilities and extended their natural resistance to hostile organisms. Most importantly, the hybrid healing techniques developed during the crisis had proven effective against biological threats that had previously devastated entire worlds. Teams of human-dragon healers were already being dispatched to other planets facing similar parasitic infections. Marcus had spent the past months traveling across Draconis Prime, establishing treatment protocols and training new partnership teams. The work was exhausting but deeply fulfilling as he watched former servants and masters learn to work together as equals. The young human approaches, announced Guardian Zephyros, his massive bronze form settling onto the platform reserved for the Elder Council. Marcus walked across the hall with the confidence of someone who had earned his place through proven capability rather than inherited status. The nervous stable boy who had once feared to speak to dragons was gone, replaced by a seasoned diplomat and healer whose opinions were valued by the most ancient beings on the planet. Honored elders, Marcus said, offering the respectful bow that had been modified to acknowledge equality rather than subservience. The final contamination surveys are complete. Draconis Prime has been declared free of parasitic organisms. A wave of satisfaction rippled through the assembled dragons. The threat that had nearly destroyed their civilization had been completely eliminated through the combined efforts of both species. Elder Drakmor rose to his full, magnificent height, his silver scales catching the afternoon sunlight streaming through the hall's crystal windows. Human Marcus, your people have given us a gift beyond measure. You have not only saved our lives, but opened our eyes to possibilities we never imagined. The gift was mutual, Elder Drakmor. Dragons gave humanity refuge when we had nowhere else to go. Working together has made both our species stronger than either could be alone. Elder Thessarian, the healer who had first questioned Marcus's unconventional theories, stepped forward with something that looked remarkably like pride in her ancient eyes. I have watched you grow from a curious stable keeper to a healer whose techniques have revolutionized our understanding of bioenergy medicine. You have earned a place of honor in dragon history. The formal ceremony that followed was unlike anything in the recorded annals of either species. The 5 elder dragons, beings whose accumulated wisdom spanned over 10,000 years, formally lowered their massive heads in a gesture of respect and partnership to the human representatives. But this was not a gesture of submission or dominance. It was a recognition of equality, an acknowledgement that wisdom and capability could emerge from any source, regardless of species, age, or social status. Let it be recorded, Elder Nixera announced, her voice carrying across the hall and being broadcast to every dragon and human settlement on the planet, that on this day, the species barriers that have defined our civilization for generations have been dissolved. We move forward not as separate people sharing a world, but as partners in building something greater than either species could achieve alone. Marcus felt the weight of history settling around him. The stable boy who had once cleaned dragon stalls in respectful silence had become the catalyst for a transformation that would reshape galactic civilization. But perhaps more importantly, he had learned that true wisdom lay not in accepting artificial boundaries, but in having the courage to cross them when lives were at stake. His willingness to challenge social hierarchy and species prejudice had saved not just the elder dragons, but had created a new model for interspecies cooperation that would benefit countless worlds. As the ceremony concluded, dragons and humans mingled freely throughout the hall, planning joint expeditions to share their hybrid healing techniques with other worlds. The partnership that had been born from Crisis had evolved into a force that would bring healing and cooperation throughout the galaxy. Valorex, the bronze dragon whose illness had first alerted Marcus to the spreading crisis, approached with the slow, dignified pace of a being who had witnessed the birth of a new age. Young Marcus, the dragon rumbled, "When I first met you, I saw only a dedicated stable keeper with an unusual understanding of dragon nature. I could never have imagined that your compassion and insight would reshape our entire civilization." Marcus smiled, remembering the frightened young man he had been just months earlier. "I learned that sometimes the most important discoveries come from simply paying attention and caring enough to act on what we see." Indeed. And in teaching us to see beyond the limitations of our own perspectives, you have given both species a future neither could have achieved alone. As evening fell over Draconis Prime, Marcus stood on the observation platform, where he had first realized the scope of the crisis facing the dragons. The city below hummed with activity as humans and dragons worked together on projects that would have been impossible for either species alone. In the distance, the great spires of the Elder Council chambers glowed with bioluminescent panels maintained by teams of human technicians working alongside dragon engineers. The stables where Marcus had spent his childhood had been expanded into a research center where both species studied bioenergy collaboration and developed new healing techniques. Most remarkably, construction had begun on the first human-dragon colony ships, vessels designed to carry mixed crews to new worlds where their partnership model could be shared with other civilizations. The refugees who had arrived on Draconis Prime 3 generations ago as desperate survivors were now preparing to become ambassadors of cooperation and healing throughout the galaxy. Marcus's mother, Elena, joined him on the platform, her own transformation from archive worker to interspecies communication specialist reflecting the changes that had touched every human on the planet. "Are you ready for tomorrow's departure?" she asked, referring to the mission that would take Marcus and a team of human-dragon healers to 3 worlds facing biological crises similar to what they had overcome. "I think so," Marcus replied. "It's strange to think that what we learned here will now help save other species on worlds we've never seen." "That's what partnership means," Elena observed. "Taking the best of what we've learned and sharing it with others who need it." As the twin moons of Draconis Prime rose over the transformed city, Marcus reflected on the journey that had brought him to this moment. A simple stable boy's curiosity about dragon behavior had ultimately led to a revolution in interspecies relations that would echo across the galaxy for generations. The elder dragons had lowered their heads to him not because he had demanded their respect, but because he had earned it through compassion, wisdom, and the courage to act when action was needed. In the end, that was the most human thing of all, the willingness to help others regardless of the personal cost, and the wisdom to see potential where others saw only barriers. Tomorrow would bring new challenges and new opportunities to prove that cooperation could overcome any obstacle. But tonight, Marcus was content to watch dragons and humans working together in the city below, building a future that honored the best qualities of both species. The stable boy had become a healer, the servants had become partners, and 2 species had learned that their greatest strength lay not in their individual capabilities, but in their willingness to share their unique gifts with each other. The universe had become a little bit smaller and a great deal more hopeful.